Hey, howdy, hey, welcome back to Trek on the Tube. Good news, everyone! We're kinda getting back on schedule. Hopefully next week we will be fully back on schedule, releasing videos on Tuesday. Until then, we'll see. This is my review and Easter eggs video for Star Trek Lower Decks Season 2, Episode 3. We'll always have Tom Paris. And yes, the episode did indeed feature Tom Paris. Two versions of him, actually, although none were a space salamander, disappointingly. Seriously, though, I did kind of want to address this first, because from what I'm seeing, this episode is receiving mixed reviews, and I feel like the utilization of Tom Paris is one of the reasons why. The other being the logic behind Boimler's predicament. So what are the complaints, and do I agree with them? When it comes to Boimler, we've never seen this sort of thing happen to any officer before in Star Trek. On the contrary, even villainous characters, intruders, usually get around ships just fine, so it did seem a little odd at first, but honestly, I feel like this episode took the time to explain that due to the Pac-Leds becoming more and more aggressive, security protocols have been beefed up, and that works. I mean, for me it does. This is happening after all of the 90s era shows, but long before Picard, so who's to say what protocols are in place or not? Lower Decks is, that's who. So if they say it, then it goes. We've never seen these years on screen before. Granted, the show overall could maybe in the future put in a little more effort into showing the audience that the Pac-Leds have now become such a force, but that's not this episode's fault, and I won't blame it for it. Overall, the Boimler thing didn't bug me. On the contrary, I found it fun. It reminded me a bit of something that Fargo did in its second season with its main character. Of course, Lower Decks took it just a bit further. But yeah, it was fine for me. Moving on to Tom Paris. Was his appearance underwhelming? And was the return of Robert Duncan McNeil a waste? I don't think so. On the contrary, I think the limited screen time, the few lines of dialogue, and the general backseat to the main plot that the character took was all perfect. Yeah, Paris is one of Boimler's heroes, and yes, all of the Voyager crew were probably seen as such by Starfleet itself, but apart from having a well-respected Admiral father, Paris is just some lieutenant, like there are so many in Starfleet. It's not like it's Sisko, or Picard, or someone huge walking on the bridge, or even, Riker. So the lack of ceremony, should I say, the fact that they didn't make an entire story focus on him, made a lot of sense. Also, it makes me very confident and happy that Star Trek has now gotten to a point where they feel comfortable enough to bring back legacy actors and have almost nothing for them to do. In my mind, this means that both the actors and the current production teams know that they will be there for each other in the future. Nothing has to be like a one-time thing. They don't have to get everything they can out of that one moment. What I'm trying to say is I think Tom Paris will be back, B'Elanna also, and the others. And getting back to the episode, I don't think it was a missed opportunity at all. I enjoyed Tom on the plate, talking to Boimler, and Boimler protecting that plate was pretty heartwarming. The Kazon joke was damn good, and the don't take us to the Delta Quadrant line from Freeman was so well executed, because it wasn't funny, and all of the laughs around seemed forced, and that's exactly how office or work polite pleasantries often come across. Now let's quickly talk about Shax and Rutherford before moving on to what I absolutely loved the most about the episode, Tendi. For starters, I was absolutely not expecting Shax to be back, and certainly not in this way. I mean, we'd all seen him in the trailers, but still, he's actually back. Honestly, I don't believe them. I think it's all a scam, and he's not really back for real. Regardless, in the context of the episode, he is, and the whole idea of not knowing how he was actually brought back is quite brilliant. Also very frustrating, because like most of you, I suspect, I want to know how he's back. Of course, they didn't tell us. That was the whole joke. And admittedly, it worked from Rutherford's quest to know to the eventual dark, twisted payoff. It's a subplot that had a certain charm to it, as well as poking good fun at previous Star Trek iterations and the notion of high-ranking officers returning from disastrous situations or even death without anyone ever really understanding how. I'm still unsure as to how they're going to handle Shax's presence, though, considering Kayshawn is still with the crew as of now. We'll have to see how that plays out. In my mind, if our boy Shax really came back from the dead, though, it makes sense that he would take it easy for a while. Get some therapy and ease back into Starfleet life. Perhaps he even had his own family episode off screen before returning to the ship. Anyways, on to the Tendi stuff. Aha! Yes, Mariner was there too, but come on, don't kid yourselves. It was all the Orion stuff that got us so excited. It was so interesting learning more about her and her family, and it was just as overdue as the Tendi Mariner team up. When it came to the dynamic they had, admittedly, it was quite predictable. Obviously, they were going to realize they didn't know each other too well, get into a rough patch, and then work themselves out of it together by the end. But even if it was a pretty evident story beat, it was well executed and kind of needed to be done in order to have the duo progress, grow, and evolve. It's also great to see Mariner's ideas on how to do things be challenged for a second time in a row, but this time by a different character. Quick side note about Mariner before we really get into Tendi, and granted this is kind of speculatory, or at least my own interpretation of things, but on screen, Mariner talks about dating bad boys, bad girls, bad non-binary beings. I forget how she puts it exactly.
That's my type. Well, one of my types.
You have a thing for bad boys?
Oh, I'm always dating bad boys, bad girls, bad gender non-binary babes, ruthless alien masterminds, bad binars.
I think she's lying. Don't misunderstand, I'm not trying to take away from her evidently pansexual self, and it's really cool for those looking for that vocal representation in the real world that they're getting it in the show. Also, I'm pretty sure she's very well attracted to everyone she mentioned in that list. I have no doubt about that. I do, however, really feel like she's just fronting. Pretending to be cooler than she is, more experienced or more well-lived than she is, and she probably hasn't dated as many people as she's claiming, and not all as different. Also, I think she doesn't quite understand why she's attracted to Boimler. So as it stands, she's just shutting those feelings down. She might try to date someone else to subconsciously make it go away, but little not-so-bad boy Boimler is her Boims, and she wants him. She just hasn't admitted it to herself yet. And on the rare occasion that she comes to accept that attraction, she tries to, snap out of it by trying to tell herself that it doesn't make sense. I don't know, that's how I feel about the whole Mariner thing. Yeah, I think she's attracted to Boimler. She just hasn't come to admit it yet. On to Tendi, the female Orion that does emit pheromones, but is still not that kind of Orion, so she prefers not to use them. I've been waiting to learn more about her and more about her people since the moment she was announced as a main character. Everyone, including me, probably, very racistly so, speculated her family were pirates or black marketeers, and as it turns out, that's kind of the case. I mean, of course, not every member of the same species is going to be the same, but from what we've seen and what we know about the Orions up until this point, that generalization was pretty much an educated guess. So yes, her family, or at least some members of it, are criminals. And Tendi herself is the mistress of the winter constellations, or, she was. Learning about the character and imagining the juxtaposition of her happy and bubbly personality with the fact that she was a terrifying Orion clan leader of some kind was amazing. The costume design blew me away, and making a point of showing us that so many Orions are still anchored down in their old ways, I think showed us just how important and significant Tendi is as a character. Mariner, Rutherford, Boimler, 20, 30 years after Lower Decks, I can all see them as captains, admirals, successful Starfleet officers, but Tendi with her background, with her determination, with her strength, and yet completely approachable outer shell, I see her as more than them, as someone important, someone influential, someone that will have great impact on the Federation itself and its neighboring powers and forces. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but that's how I feel about Tendi, and it's a big deal. The show hasn't made such a big deal out of it yet that she's joined Starfleet and that she's kind of going against the grain of her own species, but it is a big deal, and I feel like the more we learn about her character and who she is, the bigger the deal is going to become. Moving along, did I enjoy the Boimler subplot? Did I enjoy the Rutherford subplot? Yes, I did. I liked them both, and having those stories running alongside the main one didn't affect the pacing at all. On the contrary, this very crowded episode flowed quite well. But even though I loved them, yes, I would have removed them to get more Tendi Mariner team up if I were given the choice. choice. To finish the review off, the animation was, as usual, top-notch. It's redundant to mention it in every video, I know, and yet I want to, because it's true and the artists deserve that respect. With special shout out this week to whoever did the Dr. Ta'ana cat in a box scene, because that was fucking brilliant. The voice acting was, as usual, impeccable. The return of Shax was unexpected, and still is somewhat unsettling. And then, of course, seeing Tom Paris and them not making a big deal out of it just contributed to this show feeling so much like home, you know, so much like that warm blanket that we all look for when we watch Star Trek. So yeah, good episode, a round of applause. Thank you so much for making these quality episodes for us to enjoy. Congratulations, everyone, good job. And now, it is time to move on to the Easter eggs and references part of the video. Don't worry, there aren't as many as last week. I guess the best place to start off is the name of the episode, or the title, however you want to call it. We'll Always Have Tom Paris is probably a nod to the Next Generation episode, We'll Always Have Paris. Tom Paris himself was a character in Voyager. Robert Duncan McNeill returned to reprise his role. The way Boimler refers to the USS Voyager and their voyage through the Delta Quadrant and the crew, Voy, is a nod to how many fans have abbreviated Voyager to Voy or VOY for years now. When Boimler falls on the bridge all dirty with his hair sticking up, Paris describes him as a Kazon. This was a species he had to deal with in the Delta Quadrant. Also, they're pretty much known within the fandom as the dirty villains with the big hair, so the joke worked on 2 levels. Finally, the Tom Paris commemorative plate, along with the rest of the plates, are nods to the interesting Star Trek-themed objects that were sold during the 90s. Also, when Boimler says that he's got all the Voy plates, from Janeway all the way down to Kim, it's most definitely a reference to the meme of Kim never getting promoted. I love how Lower Decks at this point is basically just Trek Twitter, but in animated form. That's what it is. Anyway, moving on to more random things, this logo or emblem was first seen on Orion Pirates in the animated series. This shuttlecraft seems inspired by the, I don't know what they are, these things in the motion picture. This shuttle is from the Next Generation. This is a Domjot table and game, as seen in the Next Generation also. It almost actually seems like the same bar. These guys are Norsicans, also seen before in the Next Generation, but also an Enterprise, and slightly different. This guy is an Ariolo. We've talked about them before in the first season of Lower Decks. On one of the planets we go to that isn't Free Cloud from Picard, but pretty close, we see a place called Quarks. This is a reference to Odo from Deep Space Nine. Come on, I'm kidding. It's a reference to Quark himself. Advertised on this planet also are Vic Fontaine, the semi-sentient holographic crooner from Deep Space Nine, as well as the Zebulon sisters, which blessed the universe with their Lower Decks Season 1 choo-choo dance. This graphic display in sickbay is basically a recreation of one seen quite often in the Next Generation. These multiple pads seem to be a reference to the fact that in Star Trek, characters are always seen with multiple pads, but we're pretty sure nowadays that that's quite useless. You can do many things with a single pad. And finally, the multiple Shaxes seen in Rutherford's imagination are one in an original series era uniform, one in an Enterprise era uniform, one as Moriarty from the Next Generation, one in Neelix's costume from Voyager, one as a Mirror Universe double, and one as a Borg. During that scene, by the way, we get dialogue references to the Mirror Universe, transporter accidents, and T'Pol's different hair for 1 year or season. Oh, and the Nexus. Time is the fire in which Shax burns. Or maybe not. Maybe time is the fire in which Shax was, I suppose, resurrected. Anyway, that's it. That's all of it. Thank you so much for watching. You're all the best. Like, subscribe, comment, share, do all of those wonderful things. It helps me out. A big thanks to the channel patrons. And as usual, live long and prosper.